One of the problems we have as business owners is that we tend to get tunnel vision in our companies, and it's because we only have our perspective, just like everything in life. Uh, and today I'm going to show you how we can get out of that tunnel vision and what the gold mine of information and help that we've got that we don't even realize it sometimes. My name is Robert Poole, and if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that. Hit that like button, hit the bell, all that YouTube-y stuff. We've got a lot of great videos on here, and I think after listening to this, you'll want to share it with your colleagues, because I think this is something that everybody falls into at one time or another. And it's that tunnel vision, again, from that we only have our perspective. I started out in our business 24 years ago with a business partner, and it was just him and I, and which is, a lot of us start with just ourselves or whatever, but I was fortunate enough to have a great business partner for many, many years. And, when we're starting out, usually we don't have employees. You might hire a contractor or two, but, we're kind of making all the decisions ourselves. We're doing all the stuff. We're delivering the products or services. We're doing the sales, you name it, So it's all about us, and fortunately for me, like I said, I had a great business partner. Most partnerships, unfortunately, don't work out well, like bad divorces. But we did really well for a lot of years. But even with two of us, we still got a little bit of a tunnel vision. But eventually, after a few years, we hired our first employee, which was my business partner's sister-in-law. And the way we kind of handled it, basically, we offloaded the stuff we didn't want to do. Hey. I don't want to call this client because he's a pain, so here, you go ahead and call him, or, instead of doing this busy work, type of stuff, this stuff that has to be done, this data entry, whatever, you do it, and it became sort of the beginning of the model, how we started to do business. And it was a way of, that's how we interacted with our first employee, sort of gave them some orders, and there you go do it, which is pretty common, what, most of us do. Over time, this became sort of a process when we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 employees, and on. It became sort of a process where my business partner and I would have meetings together, and we'd decide, okay, we're going to do this strategy, this, we're going to use this market, we're going to go after this market, we're going to do this in sales, this in marketing, we're going to do these kind of things, and we would come up with the real specific ideas because, hey, we were the marketing gurus, we knew what we wanted. And then we'd call in, an employer and give them very specific instructions. You go do this without, any input. A very top-down management style. Something that, I was very familiar with, coming from a military background, where it's, you have your commander and you do what they say, and that's about it. So that was the process. I mean, you hear about delegation. But unfortunately, delegation is a good thing. We should be getting rid of, activities that are not in the revenue producing side of the business for us, instead of doing administrative stuff. But that's all great. The problem is that we just tend to offload, like I said, stuff we don't want to do, and we give very specific orders to somebody, and boom, because that's, a lot of our personality. A lot of us are type A, personalities, all that kind of stuff. That was how we did things for, probably 15 plus years, And unfortunately, my business partner passed away in 2017, very sudden, and it kind of rocked the company because, he was the public face of the company, and he did, we split things differently. I kind of was behind the scenes. I didn't have a lot of interaction with the employees. He did that part of it, the communication with the employees. I was kind of the guy, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain back there, and that was my role. And so it was quite a shock, and I had to change some things. Suddenly, I was kind of thrust into the spotlight, and I needed to do something. I knew that, so I went to attend this Tony Robbins event, which I've always been a big fan of. Tony Robbins. Wanted to, I followed his stuff since I was probably 18 or 19 years old, and so we had this business mastery thing, which was like a 5-day seminar event or whatever, and a lot of great stuff in there. But the big thing that I came away with was that he challenged us to set up a weekly meeting with our team that it was a 90-minute meeting, and the idea was to focus on how do we grow the company, not operational type of stuff. And I thought, at the time, I'm like, what am I going to talk about for 90 minutes? And I'm thinking, well, what does the receptionist know about, marketing or the direction of the company? It's like, I've been doing this a while. And so it was difficult, but I'm like, I'm kind of, I better try some new ideas here because, I'm all alone for the first time, in this business. So we started it, and I decided to give it 90 days, do these weekly meetings or whatever. Um, and we started with very basic questions, and it sounds weird, but we would ask questions like we would sit there, and I think there were 5 or 6 of us at the time, and we would sit there with a whiteboard and say, well, ask basic questions like, why are we in business? Which, we never really thought about it. I thought, well, I'm in business to make money, whatever. But why are we in the business in terms of what are we doing with our customers? What are we actually providing? What are we actually in the business of? Because sometimes we think we're in one business, but we're actually in a different business. Who are our dream clients? Who do we actually want to do business with? How do we want to serve them? Things like that. These are bigger questions, and they're basic questions, but things that go back to the root of, growing a company. If we don't have those foundations, it's pretty hard to figure out where to go. And the key was not to get into, operational stuff or daily stuff, well, this client wants to do this, and what do we do about this? And we've been having this problem here, none of that stuff. And, that's difficult, to do that, but we disciplined ourselves, and I had to kind of humble myself because, again, my original thought was, hey, they're just doing their thing over there, what I told them to do, they're not experts, and, they don't have the experience I do, whatever. And what really amazed me and really shocked me is that they started coming up with ideas that I never thought of. And things that really amazed me because, and what was really odd was that, people that you think are the least qualified to talk about answers about how to grow the company, sometimes they have the best ideas. At the time, we had a young gal that worked for us. I didn't think she was 21. I think she was 19 or 20. She was in sort of a receptionist role, doing basic data entry and stuff like that. And she would speak up once in a while, and she had some of the best ideas, better than some of the 40-plus-year-olds, certainly better than mine. And so I started to realize that, wow, there are so many great ideas out there that I'm missing out on because I've been so stuck in my own head, my own tunnel vision, my own perspective. And with a business partner for many years, the two of us kind of stuck in our own heads in that tunnel vision, and it was interesting, when we started off, of course, there's always those personalities who have no problem telling the boss what they think. But most people were kind of like, especially because of the role I had before, were kind of hesitant to share at first because they're thinking, am I going to bite their head off, or, are they going to get judged for things, And, over time, they started to trust me a little bit and realize that I wasn't going to do that. And they started to open up a little bit. And the more people opened up and the more I opened up and said, hey, I don't know how we address this, this particular area of the company, how are we going to grow this? The more honest I was with them, the more they opened up and felt comfortable sharing. And I can say just this process has literally made us hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is one of the biggest changes that we've made in our company, in the last 10 years. And it absolutely fundamentally changed the way we do business and our internally how we function as a company. There's so many benefits, and there are hard dollars that we made doing this because of ideas that we came up with. And again, if I just kept that top-down management style, just sat there and just told people what to do, we never would have had all these stuff. We would have never had that growth, and we would have never made that money. So this is really something that fundamentally changed us, and I think it can change your company too. In addition to the money, it changes the attitude of the employees in your team. Suddenly, instead of working for a paycheck because you told them what to do, and they're like, whatever, their boss told me to do this, and and I got my paycheck, so whatever. Suddenly, it becomes more important to them because they take ownership of it. When they have ideas that they've come up with, or one of their peers have come up with, not just the dude at the top, suddenly they start to take ownership of things, and suddenly they look forward to coming to work because they know they're part of something. They know they're part of growing the company. They may not technically be owners of the company, but they start to feel that ownership mentality, and you just can't get that from top-down management, So, of course, the question, of course, is how do you actually do this? I gave you the sort of the basic idea, but what we really have to focus on as owners and leaders is first we need to listen and decide to listen. And, depending on your personality, that can be tough. It was tough for me a while because I'm very strong-willed and kind of, let's do it. I've got my ideas and I've got my opinions, but I kept myself and decided I'm not going to judge any ideas, So we would, as I said, even some of the youngest employees and people that you wouldn't think, would have, that kind of input came up with stuff because, well, she came from a different generation. She's 30 years younger than me. She grew up with the internet and cell phones and everything, things that, I had no concept when I was her age, so my ego was a little bruised, but, I had to remember that something that a phone sales trainer said, when I was watching it back in the 90s, and he said, money is better than ego, and it's, you can be right or you can be rich, one of the two. And so that always stuck with me. So I try to keep my ego in check, which is the number one thing. Mechanically, again, what do? You hold one meeting a week. Try to make it 90 minutes, maybe 60 minutes to start or whatever, and focus again on those basic questions. And as you start coming up with those things, it'll start to snowball. The whole point is to focus on things that are going to grow the company and thinking not necessarily where you are now, but where do you want to be as a company? Where are you now, and what are you going to do to make those changes? And again, all about growth, not about specific things, operational, day-to-day. What do we do with this client type of stuff? If you had a larger group of employees, we didn't have this problem, but if you have 100 employees or something, well, of course, that's kind of hard to do in that size. So you break it down into different departments, or have a manager run it so it's only 10 or 15 people. Get it bigger than that, it's hard to get people get nervous on bigger groups and they're hard to share. But the biggest thing with these meetings is you have to implement a culture of no judgment. So we want to get to the point where people feel good about brainstorming and sharing, just throwing out ideas, and even if it sounds really stupid off for everyone at first, some of those ideas can actually turn into something. And it's important because if somebody throws out an idea and we immediately jump on them and say, that sucks, that's never going to work, they're not going to share again because they're embarrassed. So, the key to that, what I used to do, somebody would throw out an idea and, in my mind, I might be thinking, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. There's absolutely no way in the world we're ever going to do that. But what I would say is something to the effect of, hey, thanks for sharing that. That's a great idea. I would ask them questions about it, like, why do you think that would work? Why do you think that's important? And get them to kind of think through it, and help everybody else think through it. And sometimes, like I said, what I originally, jumped and thought was a stupid idea, the more I thought about it, the more we talked about it, I thought, maybe this could work, But either way, I'd say, hey, that's a possible solution. Let's put that in the category of, potential things we can do down the road or something, and that way they feel validated. My wife used to say that to me all the time, you're not validating my feelings. And, as a guy, for years, I didn't understand what that meant, but it's basically, understanding, listening to somebody and letting them know that you value what they're actually saying, and that you're not immediately dismissive of it. So it's that culture of non-judgment, and, it's important also not only that you don't judge people, but, you got to make sure that the group knows that that's the rules. So, you don't have one person making a suggestion or sharing an idea and then, somebody else pops off with, oh, I don't know, we're working with it, In other words, you don't let the other people in the group be judgmental either. And you teach that over time, everybody picks up on that, and it becomes a lot more effective. And so you've also got, if you've got management in place, of course, they have to buy into the same concept. And they have to understand that you're going to get a lot more production out of people You're going to have an easier job as a manager if you kind of take this attitude of non-judgmental things. So if they're even on a one-on-one basis, and speaking of one-on-one, you might be in a situation where, hey, maybe you just started your business. Maybe it's just you. Maybe you got a couple contractors that you work with, but you don't have employees. Well, it's the same concept. These days it's very easy to hire contractors, and most of us will hire contractors when we're starting out long before we hire employees. But this concept is the same thing. So you can use this with contractors. So you can meet with a contractor that you work with on a regular basis, meet with them every week or whatever, is appropriate for that relationship, and talk to them about the same things, obviously it's a little bit different relationship than with an employee, but again, you're going to get those people on your side and get them sharing with you and helping you. And it's literally a goldmine of ideas. I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of dollars worth of ideas there that you're not getting right now if you don't do this. So getting people, getting their perspective or whatever, allows you to sort of use that force multiplier concept, which, it's a way of, instead of just you've got, 10 people with 10 brains put together, it's that whole concept or whatever. But in a bigger picture, a lot of times, from an outsider's perspective, if somebody were to look at your company, like an investor or something, and this is why, private equity groups or whatever look at it, they look at your company and one of the primary assets is your customer list. And a lot of times that's what they're buying if they want to buy your company. And so they consider that the most valuable part of your company. But I would say as small business owners, the single biggest asset we have are our people. And it's because of the resources and the ideas that come from them, and all the other things that if we validate those ideas, the loyalty and their buy-in, their contribution to the company is so valuable to you. And once you have it, you realize that if they all quit today, you'd be in serious trouble. And so this is a way of recognizing that asset as well. So where do we go from here? So if you do anything like this to start off with, well, kudos, you're way ahead of where I was certainly for many years. But I would say it's one of those things you've got to constantly revisit as well. You've got to, like we would go through a cycle in these weekly meetings where we come up with topics and growth topics and everything, and we go through the same thing or, a series of different topics over like 3 months. And then we would literally start over. We'd after that 90 days or whatever period it was, when we ran out of topics, we would go back to the beginning because we had documented all this. We'd go back to the beginning and start asking those same basic questions again. And, sometimes that question, why are we in business, or, what business are we actually in? We'd find out after time that the answer to that question had changed. So this is something that's an ongoing process. So again, if you're doing it, great, you're way ahead of the game. If you're not, I'd really challenge you, just like I did, try this for 90 days. It sounds kind of crazy. It sounds like, oh, geez, that's one more thing I got to do. But I'm telling you, you got a gold mine that you don't even know about, regardless of whether you got one employee or just meet with them one-on-one, or you got a couple contractors, or you got 15 or 100 employees. You've got just a massive resource there that you can take advantage of. So, bottom line is, we don't have all the answers as business owners, and we need to get our egos out of the way and realize that, we've got a huge resource there, and that money is better than ego. Get our ego out of it, get some help from the people that are right there, people who are actually doing the work because they know more about it than you do. So take advantage of that resource. I hope this was helpful. Please share this with your friends and colleagues. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that little bell for notifications, and share this with, like I said, friends and colleagues, and throw your comments in there. We really appreciate it. This helps us get the word out. So really helps us a lot if you subscribe to the channel. So I appreciate your time today, and I'll see you in the next session.